Colin Gray did not kill anyone, yet he's on trial for murder connected to a school shooting. Colin is a single dad of 3 children. One of them is Colt Gray, a teenager who authorities say shot up his school, killing 4 and wounding 7 others. Now Colin has been accused of purchasing the murder weapon for his son after being told about his son's prior threats. Tonight, all the evidence is in and the arguments have been made, and it's time to hear the jury's dramatic verdict. But first, the emergency call sounded desperate. A wife saying her husband was cold, unresponsive. Police responded to find Eric Richens dead in his Utah home, but toxicology changed everything. Fentanyl, not in trace amounts, but in concentrations prosecutors say could not be accidental. Authorities allege Kouri Richins bought the drug and administered it in a cocktail. They cite digital evidence and statements from an alleged supplier. She has pleaded not guilty. Tonight, we have all the latest from the courtroom as this high-profile trial plays out live on Court TV. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you tonight here on Closing Arguments. Yes, we'll get to that verdict in just a little bit, but we're going to begin with what is happening in Utah, the trial of Kouri Richins. Her husband, Eric, who is dead, who is the victim in all of this, and the question is, how did he become a victim? Is he a victim of his own overdose? Is he a victim of poisoning? The one thing we do know about Eric Richins is that he was a successful businessman, ran a very successful business. He built it, had a partner, and was generating a lot of money, which at the end of the day is the purpose behind starting a business, right? You want to start a business so you make money to buy things like a house, to take care of your children, to feed your family, provide a future. And that's what he was doing with his business. What he was also doing with the money he was making was propping up his wife's dream to become a house flipper. Unfortunately, Kouri Richins, her business was an unsuccessful business. You see, it wasn't making money, it was losing money, right? The object is you start a business and then you build income. Well, she started a business and she was losing income, losing money, and losing money that Eric was earning. So you see, at some point, you're gonna, what's the saying? Cut your losses. And that's what happened. Like, Eric was done with it. Okay, we gave it a shot. It's not working. I can't dump more money into your floundering, flipping business, period. But Kouri still needed money. She was in debt. And she desperately wanted this thing to work. I've got this project, this big house. This is the one. This is the one that turns the whole thing around and turns me into a successful person, successful businesswoman, real estate magnate. And I'll be walking around, you know, Utah and Park City as like, oh, there goes Kouri. You know what? She's really good. They should give her a show on HGTV. That's what they should do. She's so good at it. Now, she needed money, and really the question for this trial is, how desperate was she for that money? How badly did she want it? How badly did she believe that she needed it? And that becomes the foundation of what prosecutors are putting in front of this jury, that she was desperate. And there was the money aspect. There was also the aspect that there were problems in the marriage. And we've seen evidence of that throughout the course of this trial. She believed that Eric, at some point back in 2019, was seeing someone at work. And she, at the time that Eric died, was seeing someone using the L word. So the level of desperation, I think, is something that this jury has to get a handle on. Like, is she desperate enough for the money, knowing she's got a prenup, knowing the limitations, knowing how badly she wanted to be successful and how poorly things were going in the marriage, that she would actually poison the father of her 3 children? Think about how desperate you have to be to do that, but that's what they're alleging. Can they prove it? That's the question. Well, one way they're trying to prove this whole situation is through a forensic accountant's testimony. Someone who gets up there is going through the books and is going to try to explain to the jury what the financial situation was. How desperate was she? How in debt was she? How poorly was this business doing? Let's take a listen. Brooke Carrington is her name, forensic accountant. Usually say the words forensic accountant, you're like, oh boy. No, this is important. This is important because you've got to put numbers to it. The jury has to understand exactly this situation because you're accusing her again. You're accusing her of taking the life of the father of her 3 children. Let's listen.
So this is just the overdraft and non-sufficient funds transactions for each of these months, just in that one account. And so I started in January of 2021, and this follows through March of 2022.
Does this tell us that for that 15-month period, there were 236 overdraft or non-sufficient fund transactions from that single account?
That's correct.
And that the amount of transactions that tried to pass but didn't was $360,000?
That's right.
And that as a result of that, this account was assessed $5,600 in fees?
That's correct.
So let me just pick an example. December. Does this show that in December she had 77 overdraft or non-sufficient fund transactions totaling $91,000?
That's what that says, yes.
That cost $2,000 in fees.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that trend, that upward trend began in October and continued through March.
That is correct.
What did she use the money for?
A lot of them were debt payments or expenses that she either paid or attempted to pay to rehab vendors like contractors and subs and trades for her properties.
Did she also try to pay herself?
Yes, she did.
What, ma'am, does this depict?
These are the checks that Kouri Richins wrote from her Navy Federal Credit Union account to herself and deposited them into the America First Credit Union accounts, and they were returned unpaid.
On March the 5th, 2022, after closing on the Midway Mansions, what was Kouri Richins' net worth?
She was in the hole. She was negative $1.6 million.
As a forensic accountant, have you formed an opinion as to Kouri Richins' financial position on March the 5th, 2022, after closing on the Midway Mansion?
Yes.
What is your opinion?
As of the date that Eric Richens died, Kouri Richins was in financial distress, and her financial enterprise was collapsing, had been collapsing, but for a significant infusion of cash and capital would have continued to collapse. It was imploding. Her debts and liabilities far outweighed her assets, and even if she had sold everything she had, it would not have been enough to get back to zero.
Money pit. Like this business was just a money pit. She was burning money. She's making debt payments. You know, just trying to catch up, and she was never going to catch up according to this witness. It just was never going to happen. It wasn't going to work. And is that enough to drive someone to the point like the only way out of all of this is a cash infusion? You know, the kind you get when someone dies and there's like policies, life insurance, maybe a piece of his business, right? And access to all the family's funds at that moment. No one to say no. Eric's not there to say, no, we're not, no. This money is for the house. This money's for the kids. This money's for our expenses. She would have been able to grab that all and pursue this pipe dream of house flipping. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, you can give it a shot. If it doesn't work, cut your losses. Start from scratch. Try something else. Maybe do Instagram. I don't know. All right, let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, former sex crimes prosecutor Stacey Honowitz, along with criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Imran Ansari, and finally, national parenting and family relation expert, Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Great to see everyone tonight. So, how desperate was she, Stacey?
Well, listen, I could never put an amount of desperation on somebody, but it would appear that the prosecution has done a great job of having the jury visualize exactly what she was going through. You know, you could stand in front of a jury and say, she's desperate, she needed money, but a jury likes to see things. And in this case, they got to see numbers, and numbers do not lie. They saw debt, liability, infusions, overdrafts, liabilities. They saw the whole gamut. So they are able to make that decision now based on what they saw, and this forensic accountant going through it very meticulously and giving her opinion as to this was financial distress, and then they can make the decision as to whether or not that was enough to push her over the edge.
You know, Imran, she was doing, anything to try to keep this thing afloat and keep this going. Money would have been better spent finding a good lawyer, filing chapter, whatever you need to file, get rid of your debts, and then get rid of the company, whatever she was doing under, start over, work on your marriage, take care of the kids, and maybe, start a different career path. Maybe she could have been that best-selling author. After Eric died, she wrote that book.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, Vinnie, it was a good day for the prosecution, and this witness really painted that picture to that jury of this financial desperation. And, throughout the testimony today, I felt like you felt that palpable, that tension from Kouri Richins as she's hearing about all her financial woes. And I think it's pretty evident that, there was a sense of desperation. The marriage was falling apart. There was the prenup to deal with. She's in the hole financially, and it's giving the prosecution all those building blocks to get to where they need to get to at the end of this trial. I think it was a good day for the prosecution.
Dr. Sue, do you think, why was she holding on to it? Was it because she really believed in it? She needed it for herself. She saw it as a vehicle that, okay, if we do get divorced, at least I have my business and I'll be fine. What was it that made her hold on to this thing and do all this financial dealing to create just more and more debt for herself?
I think it was many things for her. One, I think she held on to it because she was so afraid of failing and didn't want to admit that she was. It seems to me that this woman has a bit of an ego, and so she cannot let her ego fall below a certain point, because then she will feel as though she doesn't matter or she's nothing. So she had to keep doing this in order to feel as though she mattered. I often wonder if she felt she mattered in this marriage to her husband, to her children. I just don't know, because I feel from a lot of her behaviors and what we've seen that she creates narratives in her mind about what she believes is going on, but that's not really what is going on here.
Yeah, and you talk about, she wanted to matter. Like, she mattered to the 3 children. And at the end of the day, if she ends up in prison for the rest of her life, she's done a lot more damage than a bankruptcy. I mean, a whole lot more damage than a bankruptcy. There's already a lot of damage in this family, which has been shattered. Stacey, you know what I noticed during the testimony? Once they start getting into the numbers, like, she almost perked up. She's looking at the screen, going through the forensic account, what the calculations that she's doing. And to me, it just sent the message that, yeah, I get it. There was a level of obsession with this thing. And for her, the fight was about this business. And I deserve this because I'm good at this. I am somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what her self-esteem is like. I mean, it's got to be pretty low because she just kept getting herself into this hole. But I almost think that she wasn't smart enough to carry on this business, that she had this false sense that what she was doing was correct. And even in looking at the numbers while you were sitting in court, you didn't see her get panic-stricken. You didn't see her kind of huddle over with a kind of, oh my God. I think what she was really waiting for, you know, when the defense got up on cross-examination and to cross a forensic accountant who's got all of this evidence and these numbers, these charts sitting in front of her, who has meticulously gone through this, it's pretty difficult. But I think she was waiting for that one question that her lawyer asked at the end. Well, if she had sold the mansion, she would have come into, you know, a lot of money. She wouldn't have been in the hole. And I think she was kind of hanging her hat thinking, yeah, that's true. All I had to do was make one good sale and it would all go away. So I don't think that she was intelligent enough to really run a business, because we see what she did. She ran it into the ground.
Yeah. It's always that one big sale, and I can see that, right? She's creating this career for herself, which is great. You should go out there and try to do something if you have that drive, but you have to have some realistic goals. Like, I want to play in the NBA, Imran, and it's just not happening. It's not happening. I realize that I'm just not quick enough.
Yeah, you have to sometimes realize what, you know, the cards you're dealt with here. And I think, you know, the suggestion that there's some ego at play here, you could feel that. And you look at the evidence, you hear the narrative, you hear the testimony about her and the timeline, and you had that ego at play. That's very evident. And I think that's what ultimately leads her to where she's at now. Of course, you know, there are allegations at this point, but I'm seeing a case that is being put forth before this jury right now, a narrative that's being put before this jury. And I'm wondering how the defense is going to ultimately handle this, because you have that backdrop. You have the motive being suggested to the jury through this evidence. And it's going to be a tough time to get over this, but you have a personality there. I mean, the fact that she wrote this book after the death of her husband, it just really shows her what sort of personality you're dealing with here. And it's going to be interesting to see how the defense actually deals with it when they're dealing with their client sitting there in court like that.
Yeah, and Dr. Sue, all along I thought Imran was going to tell me, Vinnie, you might not be fast enough, but if you really work on that jump shot, maybe, just maybe, I can get you a tryout with the Knicks, because I know he's got those great tickets at the Garden. All right, Dr. Sue, looking at her inside of the courtroom, you know, compared to other defendants, I think she's presents herself in a pretty much neutral way most of the time. Like some of these other defendants we've seen recently are like outrageous, but she's kind of got this thing going on here. What do you actually think is going through her mind? Do you think she thinks she has a chance to walk out of that courtroom at the end of the day?
You know what, Vinny? I see like so many different things going on with her in the courtroom. One, I see fear, and I see that in her eyes a lot during the day. Then I see some kind of cockiness in her face, and it goes back and forth throughout the day. At the end of the day, I do really believe that she thinks she is going to beat this, because I think from watching this case for a long time now, she believes everything that she tells herself to be true. And they're delusions is what I think. And so when somebody believes that so much, they believe they're invincible and they can get out of anything. You know, Vinny, she wrote that book, in my opinion, after this to cover it up, so she would look like a great mom to the world.
Yeah, exactly.
I think she's really good at compartmentalizing things. I think as she's sitting through each section of this trial, like she's probably sitting in this forensic section thinking to herself, well, my lawyer's going to argue that a bad business deal or bad business dealings do not lead to murder. And then the next when the prosecutor gets up now to talk about the text messages, the lover, the searches, the money that she was going to get for, you know, she puts it all in little, she doesn't see the totality of the circumstances, which is what the prosecution is going to argue in their closing.
You mentioned the searches. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some of Kouri Richins' internet searches. Oh boy, I think she's got some problems there. Plus, coming up next hour. Politan investigates is more than a month and still no named suspect in the Nancy Guthrie case, but the sheriff is proclaiming they are definitely closer. When will we find Nancy? Tonight, we investigate.
This is the story of the Richens. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Kouri, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder.
He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of grief?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
So now I want to turn your attention to the post-April 13th, 2022 phones from Kouri Richins. We know from, Scott, if you could put up 3-37D, please. And you can publish that to the jury. It's been admitted. So I'm referencing this, the date on here when the silver phone and the blue iPhone were being used by Miss Richens.
Right.
Did you look at, when you were analyzing the blue phone, did you find web searches during April, that time frame the phone was used, that were relevant to this case?
Yes.
Okay, so there's 2 phones in play here in this case. Kouri Richins' cell phone, her original cell phone, is seized by investigators, so she gets a new phone. And on her new phone, she starts doing some searches. So we've got some of them here. Let's put the first batch up, and this is interesting searches, right? Remember, Eric Richens is dead at this point. Her phone has been seized. Can you delete everything on an iCloud account? Can you and she's got some typos, but I'll read through them. Can you delete everything off an old iPhone without actually having it? Can deleted text messages be retrieved? Can you change the password remotely of a lost cell phone? Can deleted text messages be retrieved from an iPhone? Can you change the password remotely of a lost cell phone? Then log into an iCloud account. She's learning how to do that. What do cops do when they seize electronics? Well, that could just be plain old curiosity, right? They took my phone. I want to know what they're doing with it. What information can be obtained from a cell phone? Let's bring back in our think tank, Stacey Honowitz, Imran Ansari, Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Imran, is there like an innocent way to explain all that to a jury?
I don't know. I don't know how they get on top of that and somehow explain that away to the jury, because those searches, and I'm sure some of the other searches that we're going to go over in a bit, are just so horrible for her. I mean, you know, why are you searching that? You've given over the phone. It's been seized by law enforcement. If you are looking at that, what does that tell you? You are looking at a way to somehow manipulate or delete data out of a phone which is no longer in your possession. Now, is there any innocent explanation for that? I don't know. Maybe the defense is going to say something that there was things that she was embarrassed about of a personal nature that had nothing to do with the alleged crime. But I think that's going to be something really hard to sell to the jury. And those search terms are not helping her in this case.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Sue. The only thing she's not searching is like, can they seize your new cell phone and read the searches on your new phone? Like they didn't.
I know.
Dr. Sue, is this another, like, we don't catch the smart ones?
It's kind of like a nail in her coffin, and I can't wait till we get to the other ones. It's really going to shut it. Because guess what's happening here? And this is what happens in a lot of cases. They're not thinking about anything that they're doing, because if it was you or me or anybody else, we'd be thinking like, if we wrote something like that, we would get caught right away. But she's not thinking about that at all. All she's thinking about is how to save her own butt. Okay, that's what she's thinking. But at the same time, she doesn't realize that what she's doing is actually going to probably, which I believe put her in jail, because this woman was on a mission to get exactly what she wanted, and nothing was going to stand in her way of getting that.
Yeah. Let's get to another batch here. It's an interesting batch. Utah prison. Women Utah prison, right? Well, I guess whenever you're planning a trip, you know, you want to see what the accommodations are like. You can go on to Airbnb or you can search local prisons. Summit County District Attorney. Can cops uncover deleted messages on an iPhone? How to lock my iCloud. What does lock lost iPhone actually do? Summit County District Court. How to turn Find My iPhone off. Stacy?
Yes.
Are prosecutors salivating over this? Do they just love this?
Yeah, I mean, they are. They are. They absolutely are. This is fabulous evidence for them. They get up, they put it up on the screen, as big and as bold as you can imagine, and they talk about it and they talk about it. And sometimes in cases like this, when you have that kind of evidence, the defense kind of glosses over that. That's kind of a piece of evidence that we're not going to talk about in closing. You know, because how do you cross, what do you say? That she accidentally was typing in, when do I get a payout? You didn't show that one. There was one that said, how long does it take to
I've
get
got
paid on
more.
life insurance?
I've got more.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen that
So that's what I'm
commercial,
saying.
Stacy? But wait, there's more.
Yeah, Vinnie, read them off, because some of them
Okay.
are worse than the ones we just saw.
They're unbelievable.
All right, we don't have how's long to die in the cold. We don't have that, but we do have how long does life insurance companies take to pay? What is a lethal dose of fentanyl? What is considered a lethal dose of fentanyl? Can a manner of death be changed on a death certificate? If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? What is presumptive positive for naloxone? Is naloxone similar to heroin? What is presumptive positive? Can you overdose on naltrexone? I don't even know that one. Norfentanyl. All right, she's doing some research here. Imran?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, she's doing a lot of research there. And then, you know, as we know, she's also then looking up, you know, about luxury prisons for the rich. So maybe we're saying maybe she wasn't the smartest in the bunch, but perhaps she has some foresight that the writing may be on the wall down the line, and she wanted to see what has the best digs. But you're looking at that. I mean, look at those searches. It's going to so many aspects of the prosecution's case right there that if they wanted to just rely on that and evidence, of course, they're going to have to connect all the dots. But putting that up, that's your summation right there. That's the consciousness of guilt right there. I mean, that's their case. I mean, like those are her own words. She's typing that away. She has now given them what they needed. And I think, you know, how do you get, you know, Stacey was saying, how do you get away from that? Maybe you just leave it alone as the defense attorney, but how do you know, it's like, it's literally right there in black and white. Her words, her typing, it's really, really bad.
And that's the one place. It's such a great point, Imran. That's the one place you always want to go. Like, and you know, I sit in this chair and I'm always thinking about it. I think jurors have to think about it. Getting inside the mind of the defendant. And this takes us there, Dr. Sue, right inside of the mind of Kouri Richins.
It's almost like it's mapped out for us exactly what she was planning and plotting. I mean, I don't think that she was researching fentanyl because her new career after flipping the houses is that she's going to become a nurse or a medical doctor. You know, so it's right there in front of everyone to see. You can't deny what the jury is seeing. It's right there on paper from her phone.
I'm always fascinated and really, like, I guess none of us can relate to the mind of an accused killer or someone who's convicted of murder. But you've got 3 children at home, Stacy. Yes, you've got a prenup, but like, she's young. There's a whole life in front of you. And if you even think for a moment that the Utah Women's Prison is a potential landing spot, how do you take that step? Like, even if there's a chance, I don't know what she believed the chance was, but to me, if that's even in your mind, how do you take that next step? It's almost like I can't get it, because she has so much going on, so much good in her life, right? The 3 little boys. She's living a very comfortable life. Business isn't going great. You want to get divorced. You want to move on. You found someone else that you apparently love. You're using the L word. There is so much to life in front of her that still ends up accused of this murder, despite the fact that she had an idea that it could end this way with her on trial.
Yeah, listen, in the 38 years that I prosecuted cases, and even some of the most horrific cases, the sex crimes cases, that I could never understand why somebody would do something. Sue is probably the better expert to ask. I would only think in this case, in watching her and seeing the things that she has done, is that she really thought she could, as we say, get away with murder. She just thought her life would be better. She'd have the 3 kids. She'd have money. She'd have a career if he was out of the picture. And she really just thought to herself, this is the way that I'm going to do it. But as far as what's in their psyche and what they're thinking at that moment, I really couldn't tell you. I don't know, because we sit there as jurors, as prosecutors, as defense lawyers, as the public saying, how could she? How could she? So I don't know. And I don't know if anybody could ever explain it.
Yeah.
Once she's in a state of, I have to get out of this, she's in a zone and she sees nothing but that. And so they don't see, she's not thinking about her kids. She's not thinking about what's going to be next. Up in her mind, she's only thinking about what she needs to do to get out of this. And everything else around her just doesn't matter.
When we come back, I'm wearing the red tie. It's a verdict night. The father of a school shooter on trial, basically for what his son did before his son even goes on trial. We've got the results next.
Ladies and gentlemen, that man and his son are both responsible for the immense suffering that occurred on September 4th. The blood is on their hands, and the defendant needs to be held accountable for his actions that led to the murder of 4 people and numerous other injuries, both mental and physical.
Everybody in this community wants to see somebody go to jail other than this young man right here. This is the person who went into the high school and shot and killed 4 people he didn't even know and injured scores of others. This is the person who needs to be punished. He made a conscious decision to do this, a secretive decision.
Colt Gray on the left, his father, Colin Gray, on the right. Colt Gray has not been tried, but has been accused of the mass murder in that school, in his school in Georgia. But his father went to trial first, charged with second-degree murder in Georgia, which is a very unique statute in Georgia. And it's not traditional second-degree murder, but because of the ages of the victims and the alleged conduct here, it does fall under second-degree murder, 10 to 30 years potentially for each count of second-degree murder in this case. So it's a serious case. It's a big deal. And one other case was like this, Oxford school shooter, involuntary manslaughter. In those cases, mom and dad were convicted. We tried to scream at the top of the mountain here to let every parent know and be on warning about this. You got to keep an eye on your kids and know what's going on in their lives and understand the responsibility that comes with you raising that child and potentially providing access to a weapon. And if they become a school shooter, prosecutors are getting more aggressive. They were successful in the Oxford case, unsuccessful in going after police officers in Parkland and Uvalde. But again, in all these cases, the actual shooters are either dead or convicted. It's the people around them, as prosecutors again become more aggressive as we try to do something to deter this behavior and to save innocent children and teachers inside these schools. So today was verdict day. You saw bits of the closing arguments. Let's take you inside the courtroom.
Jury verdict. Count 1, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 2, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 3, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 4, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 5, involuntary manslaughter, unfaithful act. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 6, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 7, involuntary manslaughter, unlawful act. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 8, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Guilty across the board, and you saw the reaction or lack of reaction. Like, you almost have to expect it, right? I think you're in a courtroom, the victims are who they are, it's a school shooting, you will likely be held responsible if you are providing the murder weapon here. Let's bring back in our think tank Stacey Honowitz and Dr. Sue Kornbluth with us. First question, always in this, right? Especially in a verdict in a case like this. Was justice served today? Stacey.
Yeah, I absolutely believe so. We had this discussion a week or two ago about whether or not he should have even been charged. I said, absolutely. I'm not surprised by this verdict. Like you said, it's across the board, and it was a short verdict. I mean, you had a lot of counts and a lot of things to think about, and they went back there, listened to the evidence, and they came out pretty quick.
Dr. Sue, your thoughts? Is justice served here?
Hands down, justice was served. I've been asking and hoping for this for a long time, to do something to deter these shootings. When you have a child and you know that they are struggling for mental health issues, you do not put a gun in your child's hands. And because he knew that and put that gun in his child's hands, he is guilty on all counts, and justice was absolutely served today. And I hope parents are watching this to understand you can go to prison for not taking care of your child when they are struggling with mental health issues.
Yeah, this one had a lot. There was a lot going on. He was troubled. He knew that. Police had visited 16 months beforehand, but police, I don't think, did enough investigating that. And they sort of did a brief, cursory investigation, and nothing resulted from it. And I think it sent the wrong message to the father at that point as well. Stacey, will this change things? This happened after the Oxford school shooting. Obviously, this father didn't get that message from that case. How many more is it going to take for it to sink in? Because ultimately, what we want is for this to not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. You know, you can't leave a case like this to be covered by court television. Something like this and this verdict needs to go nationwide. It needs to be front page tomorrow about what happened in this case and what happened to this father and what the consequences are. Because if you leave it just into the legal community, the whole world's not going to hear about it. Not a lot of the schools, not a lot of the parent-teacher associations, not a lot of the teachers, not a lot of the districts. This has to be nationwide, and it has to be out there for the world to see what could happen and what does happen.
So now we get to the next part of this, right, which is going to be the sentencing. 10 to 30 years for the second-degree murder counts, but there's 2 second-degree murder convictions. Then you've got 2 involuntary manslaughter charges for the adults in the case that were killed as well. What's justice here? Is justice stacking them up? consecutively, which gives him exposure that could potentially be the rest of his natural life? Or is this someone who deserves to serve some time and maybe have a chance to get out in 10, 20, 30 years? I'll begin with you, Dr. Sue.
Yeah, I mean, Vinnie, it's a very good question because, you know, we always are for rehabilitating, and perhaps 10 to 20 years is enough for him to do that, to understand how the impact of what happened, of putting this gun into his child's hands. But, you know, I think a lot of people are going to say he should be in jail for the rest of his life because he provided his son, who is the killer, with the gun and the ammunition to kill all these people. So he's as guilty as his son is in this. I think you're going to see split decisions on this from people in terms of what they think is right or wrong. I am for rehabilitation, but at the same time, I see how much he contributed to this with his son.
Stacey, your thoughts on it?
I don't know how you kind of cut him a break. I really don't see. I understand what Dr. Sue is saying, and I don't know if a lot of people would feel the same way that he deserves to be rehabilitated. How do you rehabilitate a father who gave the weapon to his son who killed? I mean, what do you rehab? How did you not know? So I would think that the prosecutors in this case, I haven't spoken to them, I don't know, but I would think that they're asking for the maximum penalty in this case.
Stacey Honowitz, Dr. Sue Kornblue, thanks so much. Imran Ansari, thank you as well. I know we lost his signal. When we come back, something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, more than a month has passed and still no sign of Nancy Guthrie. Where should we be looking for Nancy? Tonight, we investigate.
Weeknights on Court TV.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case.
It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Weeknights at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board, and it is bye-bye body cam. Justin Timberlake, remember he got arrested on Long Island, pleaded guilty to impaired driving in September of 2024. Police said he ran a stop sign in the Village Center. Well, he has filed papers trying to prevent the release of the body camera video from that arrest. His attorneys argue that it would devastate Timberlake's privacy by revealing intimate, highly personal, and sensitive details. They also said it would cause severe and irreparable harm to his reputation by subjecting him to public ridicule and harassment. They usually get revealed. The body camera is a public document, public arrest, public record. We'll see what the judge does. Right now, I need you to take a look at your television screens. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Jaden J. Imhoff. Jaden missing from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania since the 25th of February, just 16 years old. If you see Jaden, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Philadelphia Police Department in Pennsylvania. That number's on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get Jaden to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.